So it should come as no surprise that I am not a fan of standardized testing in any way, shape, or form. Um, Actually, maybe that is a surprise to you. Maybe you're good at tests. I have never been fond of tests. I hate tests. I think they're pointless. I don't think it's a good, accurate account of what people's knowledge is. It puts people under stress. It puts people under duress. Some people like it. Maybe it's a challenge, like a hurdle or something like that. I don't think it's very helpful, to be honest. I think tests are just a piece of shit. I don't like them in any way, shape, or form. This also goes with people that do certificates rather than degrees. The certificate, like, let's see, as an example, the Microsoft certification. That's an easy one. It's basically a series of tests. There's no practical exam to show that you know the knowledge you're claiming to know. You just take a test and that's the end of it. So it's all paper exercise. There's no practical exercise, which I find to be extremely self-defeating, to say the least. And it just so happens that one of the tests that I hate the most has gotten hit with social justice. Isn't that amazing? They decided to add what they called the adversity score, and it's a real dumpster fire.
If you don't listen to me, you're going to regret it.
So the best article I found actually came from Forbes and a guy named Peter Green. He's actually an educator, which kind of helps the situation as well because he's been through the standardized testing. He's an ex high school teacher, I believe. He looks at K through 12 policies is kind of his focus. And this is probably the best take I've seen on the SAT being a piece of shit that I've seen anywhere. So let's go into what he had to say about it. For the College Board, for years, has been trying to rescue its floundering flagship, the SAT. Yes, it has.
That's right.
You fools! I said so, and I'm right.
Okay.
The newly announced adversity score is just the latest unforced error from the SAT test giant. For almost a decade, the company has been fighting for market share. 2012, it hired Dave Coleman, fresh from his work as an architect of language proportion from the Common Core standards. Oh, then we can tell he's a real winner right there. The theory was that Coleman could lead the redesign of the test that would bring it in line with Common Core so that the students steeped in the new standards would be well prepared for the SAT. Well, Common Core is actually a giant piece of shit disaster, to say the least. It is a collection of tests and a rethink of how you educate. Now, I haven't met a teacher that actually liked Common Core. I've met a few that said, there's some things like in math that it was okay with, but pretty much everything else was absolute garbage. Like, I did not find anybody that liked it. If you went through Common Core, leave a comment and tell us your experience about how much you enjoyed or hated it. I personally did not like it, especially when it compared to college and especially when it compared to what I went through in high school and junior high. Although my high school experience, I didn't graduate high school. Besides being a PhD, I never graduated high school for one, I don't know if it's a very good reason, but I didn't graduate. There's an interesting story behind that. Maybe I'll share it someday. But it had to do a lot with technology. Let's just put it that way. The one section I thought was interesting. On top of that, Coleman proudly announced that his new improved test would be a tool for eradicating social injustice. The test would be a great leveler. Social injustice. So what he did was he put a new test to the market, and the new test was underway in 2014, launched 2016 year. There were problems. The PSAT score from the fall were late. Test prep experts were advised students not to take the new SAT at all. In an attempt to clamp down on cheating, the College Board implemented some last-minute measures in 2015 that added to confusion and chaos. So in other words, they botched it right the hell up. By 2016, former employee was publishing concerns about the test, including flawed items, inadequate development process. Reuters reported on how rushed the redesign had brought Coleman into immediate conflict with some of the College Board test designers. That report followed a 5-part Reuters series in March, where the whole series of problems focused particularly on terrible security problems. I don't think it was just that. I think it was the problem of Common Core trying to align with actual standardized testing, which is absolutely atrocious to begin with. Meanwhile, colleges are increasingly dropping the SAT requirement, and research continues to suggest that high GPA is a better indicator or predictor of college success than SAT scores. Here is why. I've read these studies actually, and the reason why the overall GPA is a better predictor than a single test is because the GPA is an aggregate. It takes your performance over the course of a year and compiles it into a score. That score be, like for example, some states are 0 to 4, 4.0 being the best. Texas and a few others do 5.0, so it's a 5-point yearly, I guess, score. But because it's an aggregate, it's a better indicator of your success. Additional input into this is actually kids like me would have gotten left under the bus if we went by the GPA, because I had a 1.6 in high school. I just didn't give a shit, and it's because of technological difficulties, which I'll get into maybe in a different video. Maybe at the end of this one, I don't know. It might be relevant. I seriously doubt it. Coleman's notion of the SAT means of opening college wasn't working out. A stinging report showed that the SAT redesign had made it harder for female students to score higher bands. Good job. And also, here's the thing that everybody else is reporting on. The College Board's own data shows that when you break down the scores by racial subgroups, there was obvious gaps. As a group, white students scored higher in the test than blacks. Asians scored higher than us. And Hispanics scored higher than the blacks too. The blacks were basically on the bottom rung of the SAT scores. And what's interesting is here, if you, I'll link the article in the description. It's not necessarily that race is a critical factor, although what they're kind of alluding to in this thing is the race realist. Blacks are less intelligent than whites or other subcategories on average. I don't buy that for a second. I think it's atrociously stupid. I think it's garbage. But there is some truth to it when you base your opinion on a single moment in time capture, something like an IQ test or the SATs. None of these are aggregates. This doesn't show the capabilities or the intelligence of an individual. It only shows a moment in time capture under duress, under stress, when they take this test to whether or not they'll be good. In addition to that, they noticed that those that had more money scored better. Why? Because they paid, in here it said up to $5,000 for a test prep class to help you study and pass the SAT more effectively. So essentially, you test for it. Unless, of course, you're super rich, like some assholes on the East Coast that paid for somebody to cushion their SAT and ACT so that they would pass that test with no problem because somebody else is taking it for them and they had them cushion their test scores.
Do you have any suggestions what we should do?
That's why GPA is a better indicator of success, and why most colleges now lean toward the GPA as being your primary indicator of success within their college. Not necessarily the SAT, although the ACT is still kind of accepted, not as much as GPA.
That's very interesting. You've done well. You've got the right technique.
It continues on in here where Coleman tries to defend his decision on doing what he's done. Essentially, he's trying to make it racially diverse and adding a diversity score. And the reason why nobody likes this idea is because basically it's saying income inequality is a problem. Therefore, what they're going to do is correct the test scores based on your income inequality, which is also racially charged and biased. So there's no way to accurately account for this. People can lie and say they're from a less privileged area, poorer part of the city, and then basically cushion their scores because they claim they're from a certain location. Maybe they put their uncle's address on there or something crazy. They can lie about their parents' income, or they can put their parents' income and look like they're bigger. But essentially what they're trying to do is saying those that make a certain amount of money are better than others. Therefore, we will punish those that make a certain amount of money in order to uplift those that do not. Aside from this being unequal and inequitable, as they'd like to use equity, actually, that is equitable. You're leveling the playing field to the lowest common denominator. Those that make dirt shit nothing are now equal to $200,000 a year people in this test. So when they say level the playing field, this is what they mean. The adversity score is a perfect example of equity. You're taking everybody's score, dropping it to the lowest possible achievement, and saying, here you go, you all are just going to win that trophy at this point. Good job, we're all proud of you, here's your participation medal. It's garbage bullshit that is coming out of social justice from an asshole that's a social justice warrior that is now the board CEO of College Board. It's amazing. It's amazing to me that they would do something like this. This is why I pressure my kids to have high GPAs. I want to see A's in their classroom classes. I want to see A's in their tests. I want to see A's in their overall achievement every quarter. I want them to prep for the ACT and there's also another test that you have to do for doctoral admissions that I know 2 of my kids are ending up that direction that they need to prep for. I've actually prepped for it myself, but not taken it because I'm not sure if I'm going to go for a second doctorates or not. Maybe I'll be that insane. Maybe we'll elect Elizabeth Warren and she can wipe out my student debt. Of course, I make more than her median income, so therefore I wouldn't get the benefit of that anyways, even though my student loan is as much as my house. But, you know, what the fuck? Why not? Anyways. It's just... It doesn't make sense to me. And I like how this thing closes. You would not go back to that store for macaroni and cheese. Talking about, if you ask, what kind of cheese is this? How is it made? Where did it come from? How much do I add? What do you mean by a box of macaroni and cheese doesn't actually contain macaroni and cheese? The clerk ignores you. Just use the amount it seems right. You know, kind of eyeball it. You would not go back for the macaroni and cheese. The SAT is in trouble, and no amount of adversity is going to help. This is 100% fucking true. All this is a virtue signaling bullshit attempt to save the SAT, hoping that progressivism will save its ass. When in fact, there's a great meme out there of get woke, go broke. The SAT's about to go broke. I'm looking forward to it. I hope it fucking dies because the GPA is where it's at. When I went through college, the only thing I fucking cared about was my GPA. My school did not do tests. We did practical exam through essay, and we had to do a presentation on what we learned. So we had to demonstrate our knowledge. We had to demonstrate that we actually learned fucking something from this school.
All our hard work for nothing.
But I digress. This whole mess is going to have the SATs falling on its ass and losing more of the market share. I hope that every college goes to the general assumption that the GPA is an overall good assumption on what a child may do or what a potential student may achieve within their college, because it's an aggregate score over several years. They can look at the 4 years of college or high school and see what their GPA is. If it stayed the same, like 3.5, for example, or if it went from a 3.0 to a 3.7, say they went up over 4 years, that's a demonstration of a continual improvement. If it stays stagnant, it's a demonstration of continual performance. If it was low, it's a demonstration of underachievement. If it's really low like mine at 1.6, there may be things there, but at that 1.6, it's like, yeah, we don't want to touch you, dude. You're not where you need to be. And so college entrance exams at that point is what I had to go through to be able to go to college. And that's a different park and different achievement, if you will. But that's all I had for this one. I thought you'd enjoy it because the SATs are absolute garbage. I keep them right up there with the e-colors score that people take, or the what's that other one? The MBTI. Actually, I've used that one in research and found that it was lacking in several fields. But most psychological exams that are supposed to check your personality and see how you are moment-in-time captures. They're not really useful for aggregate scores of personality. Aggregate scores of personality would take months to collect because you have to maintain and watch that person. You'd also have to have them evaluate their mood, if you will, over a long period of time to determine whether or not this person is X, Y, or Z. Now, this SAT thing, right up the same alley. It's equivalent to a personality quiz on BuzzFeed for all I fucking care. It's garbage. It's absolute garbage. The aggregate is the way to go. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Pass it around to anybody that thinks the SAT is the shit or the ACT. Keep your kids in school for the GPA. Make them focus on their grades, not the SAT, not the ACT. Fuck that shit. Make them get 3.5s. Make them get 4.0s. Go for valedictorian. That's where you get the good credit. That's where the grades are at. That's where your scholarships are at. It'll benefit them in the long run. All right. Thank you for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time.
The class is finished today.